In life, we encounter people every day, all of whom have stories to share. We rarely take the time to ask people their personal stories, many of which will touch, move, and inspire us in some way. Matt has a passion for making authentic connections and learning about people from all walks of life. He has lived a life of giving back to the community and making a difference in people's lives. Are you ready to meet fascinating people and hear some inspiring stories? The Matt Hilton Show will introduce you to a world of possibilities you never knew existed. Sit back, be present, and enjoy. Here's your host, Matt Hilton.
Hey everyone, Matt Hilton here, the host of the Matt Hilton Show. Thanks for tuning in today. Today's guest grew up in the Dallas area. She was a cheerleader on the Dallas Sidekicks. She's been an educator focusing on special needs children, and she was the first elected Collin County Republican Chairwoman. You don't want to miss this episode. Stay tuned for a word from our sponsor.
With almost 20 years of real estate experience in the North Texas area, the professional realtors at Hilton Realty Advisors have helped over 500 clients with their housing needs. Hilton Realty Advisors covers all areas of real estate: buying, selling, building, investing, and renting. We deliver the keys to homeownership to all through integrity, love, and joy. Call us today for all of your real estate needs.
Hey everyone, Matt Hilton here, the host of the Matt Hilton Show. Thanks for tuning in today. Today's guest is a great friend of mine. We've known each other for about 20 years. She's lived in the North Dallas, Collin County area for all of her life. And she's been in various roles, and we're going to talk about those today. Kathy Ward is a fascinating person, and she has some inspiring stories she's going to share today. Kathy, thank you so much for being here.
Well, Matt, thank you so much for having me. I just think the world of you, and to be on your show is really an honor. Thank you.
Yeah, well, it's an honor that you're here as my guest because
Can we hug here?
I have respected and adored you since I've met you.
Thank you.
You have done some wonderful things for our great state and for our county, and I just want to acknowledge that and say that to you today.
Thank you so
You're
much.
welcome. You're welcome. So tell us a little bit about Kathy Ward. Like, you grew up in Richardson.
Yep, grew up
right?
in Richardson, went to Richardson schools, elementary school, graduated from Berkner High School, go Rams, and then ended up going to school part of the time in, it was Southwest Texas State University then, now it's Texas State, and then graduated from North Texas. Ended up, when I was doing my student teaching, moved in with my dad in 1991 when I was getting ready to graduate. And so that was the first time I lived in Plano, and have lived in Plano since 1991. And you can't get me out of the city.
Wow.
I love it. I love it.
So I have to ask, where do you get your vivacious personality?
Oh, goodness. I love life. I'm one of those people, I feed off being around other positive people. And I feel like every day you get from God is a gift. And I truly believe that with all my heart. So make the best of those days that you have. Unfortunately, you and I know people who we've lost way too soon. I actually, this last year, lost I've lost a number of family members and significant people in my life in the last year and a half, including two friends, a younger one that I was mentoring, and then another friend my age, who I used to cheer for the Dallas Sidekicks with, to suicide. So I think you got, if you've got the energy and you can muster that smile and you can get out there and you love what you do, and you love the people in your life, and you love the people that you're surrounded by, and you love your family, and if you're me, you'd love your pets too, then just take advantage of that. And I think it positive energy, and I think this is one of the reasons you and I connected right away. Positive energy people and people that love doing for others. I think they feed off each other. Like, I was walking in, I was happy to come to the studio today, but then when I saw you, I'm like, Matt,
we ran down the hall to each other.
This long hug, and I think that's probably the best explanation for it. My parents were always positive. My brother's got a wicked sense of humor. I've got, just amazing friends that I was raised with, and was very blessed to be and to still have a circle of people, including family, that are always lifting each other up. I think it makes a difference in how you present yourself to other people. Does that make sense?
It does. It totally does. It makes a total difference, and you are who you surround yourself with,
Yes.
right? So if you're surrounded by people who aren't positive, then you're probably not going to be a positive person, right?
Yeah.
And so, I appreciate that, because if someone was to ask me the question, where does your personality come from?
Yep.
I don't know the answer to that question either.
Yeah,
right?
it's kind of
it's not my mom or dad.
It's a great question.
So, yeah.
It's kind of it's who you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Kathy, in your bio, you mentioned something about being involved in dance and cheer and all sorts of stuff. You even mentioned the Sidekicks a few minutes ago.
Yes.
So can you tell us more about that? What got you involved in it?
Absolutely. I grew up in doing ballet and jazz and things like that. Always, would see the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders and just thought all that stuff was so cool. And so when I went to Berkner High School, one of my goals was, and luckily I achieved it because it was, I've met some of my best friends through this organization. I became a Berkner Bandolero. So that was high school. Absolutely loved that. Then went to college. I'd had a snow skiing injury, and I was told no more high kicks, very limited dancing. And I went to college, and like a year later, I tried out anyways they were then the Southwest Texas State Strutters. Now they're the Texas State Strutters. Amazing organization. Loved that time. Then when I became a teacher at Plano East Senior High, which was my first job out of college, and just what an amazing job that was. I was the special education lead teacher, and had been working there for a couple of years. And the lady who was the drill team coach at the time had become the cheerleading coach as well. And she came over to me and she said, I can't do both at the same time. Mm-hmm. Would you like to come on as my assistant director? And I was like, are you kidding me? I get to teach special education and dance. This is the greatest job ever.
Right.
And so I became the assistant director, and just loved that. In the meantime, while I was still in college or finishing up college, I had cheered for the Dallas Sidekicks. I was on their very first cheerleading squad that they had back in the day. Way back in the day, Matt, way back in the day. And have just loved it ever since. Even when my daughter was a cheerleader in middle school, I was one of the coaches. And that's why this shoulder hurts sometimes, because you shouldn't do stunts when you're past the age of 40. Mm-hmm. So I've just always loved that world. And now kind of taking it, I don't even know if I have this on my in my bio, but I have been the last few years a judge at the Miss Texas Spring Workshop. So I still kind of get to be part of a world where, you're working on putting your best foot forward for yourself.
Yeah. So what did dance and cheer, what did that teach you? How do you use some of those skills and lessons learned in life today? That's
a great question. First of all, teamwork. Unless you're some type of solo artist, which that was never my thing, you've got to work with the team, and you've got to be very aware of the people around you. This is really a good question, Matt. You've got to be very aware of the people around you, where they are, because when you're stretched out, and we had like 100 ladies on drill team when I was in college, and we're completely stretched out from, end zone to end zone on the football field, and you're all supposed to be doing the same thing at the same time. You become very aware of other people. And I think that's a good life skill to have at any given time. You can tell when someone's in trouble. You can tell when you need to step your game up to help somebody else. So that helped tremendously. And I mentioned earlier, I'd had several significant losses this year, and one of those was my drill team instructor, Barbara Tidwell, who is famous. She was a Kilgore Rangerette, and she started, over 60 years ago, started the Texas State Strutters, and just an amazing woman. And I remember when she passed, I had even put on my social media page because I wanted to pay tribute to her. And I wrote that outside of family members, that she has had the biggest influence on my life, because she took it she took it a step past. She knew that, okay, I'm not going to be 56 years old on the Matt Hilton Show doing high kicks, but she taught us, manners and how to conduct yourself as a lady, and she gave us tips that were very empowering, very encouraging, and just kind of how do you operate, if you're going to be at an interview, if you're going to be eating dinner with your boss, or you're being interviewed to be the boss, how do you conduct yourself? And she would have like etiquette classes and coaching classes during some of our downtime on that. And there has never been a position I've held where Miss Tidwell's voice doesn't come into my head at some point with some great nugget that she gave me back when I was in college.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thanks for asking about it.
For sure. And you said something about she empowered you.
Yes.
And I view you as a powerful woman.
Oh.
And I saw that when I first, in the early years of knowing you, right? You were the first female elected Collin County Republican Chairwoman.
Yes.
Correct? How did you get to that point? What are some things that if someone's looking to pursue a political career, what did you do to get to that place in your life?
I hate to say, hard work, and everybody's like, oh yeah, it's always hard work and dedication and set your goals.
But it is.
I mean, you're successful in your career. You're successful on this show. Hard work, determination, setting goals, bringing a vision that you have to fruition. And if that means you've got to put up sticky notes, if you've got to have a friend who says, hey, you said by the end of this week this was going to be done, or you've said in the next year you were going to achieve this goal. It goes back to who do you surround yourself with? What are you putting in your own head, kind of a thing? Are you putting good thoughts in your head or negative thoughts like, no, I shouldn't do that? I remember when I mentioned that I was going to run for county chairman, and in both major political parties, you tend to have folks who are older, maybe more retirement age, who run the local parties. And so I was about to turn 40. And not a lot, but several folks were like, you should wait until you're a little bit older, or we've got, there's some other gentlemen who've been at this for a while, and we think they really should go ahead. And I said, well, it's a free country, and that is awesome. And anybody can run who wants to run. And the first time I ran was in a special election. And, I utilized that I'd been a volunteer, and I had held some positions, like I was the chairman of the Texas Young Republican Federation. I'd helped start the local club. And I, really talked about how we need to bring all facets together, the Republican Women's Club, the Men's Club, the Young Republicans. We've got to continuously be reaching out to that next generation. And don't be afraid to reach out to that next generation. I give a speech from time to time about whenever I'm with an audience of young women or women, and I'm like, don't be each other's glass ceiling. You hear about all these glass ceilings out there. I know you hear this kind of talk. It's one of those things that, be the person that lifts somebody else up. Be the person that empowers someone. Be the person that mentors someone. So what if somebody's smarter than you, or cuter, or whatever the case may be? That's fantastic. We want to keep bringing up the next generation, not just in politics, but in anything you get into. But I really had a clear vision of what I wanted to do with the party, and was very blessed to win the special election. And then any of my campaigns after that didn't have anybody. Several people talked about running against me, but they didn't. And so I was very honored to serve in that position, and especially as the first female, and so far the only female. I would imagine that would change at some point in time. But we're really, we're very blessed in this country that we have a lot of talented people who are not only wanting to get into politics, but nonprofits, volunteerism. And I kind of think Matt, my volunteerism, be it, Special Olympics, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, anything I did with my kids, I feel like that's what energizes me and keeps me going. Mm-hmm. And knowing that there are people that I can help, and if I'm with a group of people that we can help, and then you're always looking, I feel like if you're a leader, you are always looking for that next generation. You're always looking for the next Matt or the next Kathy. So you can say, hey, come join us. You're going to be great. Why don't you serve on this committee? Why don't you do this? And encourage and lift people up. Because I was thinking, if I'm almost 40 and I'm too young, that's a problem,
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So as you went through that process and winning that election, and then you were elected to county commissioner, correct?
Yes.
How many years did you serve in that capacity?
I was 2005 to 2008 to 2010. It was a unique situation. One of a dear man who had served on the county commissioner's court had passed away. So the county judge had to appoint an interim person to serve because literally that was like in August. Just a few months later in November, there was a general election. So somebody had to get in, then you had to win an election, a special election to be on the ballot. So I was appointed by, at the time it was now Congressman Keyself, but Judge Keyself. He appointed me to the position, and then I had to run in front of this is a political lesson, y'all. This is fun. Right. I had the precinct chairmen who were in my commissioner's precinct all got together and they voted. And there were about 5 people that ran for that position to be on the November ballot. I was very blessed, very fortunate that that's the direction God wanted me to go at that time, and won a place on the ballot and then won the election outright in November, and just loved my time there. I know you and I think we ran into each other at like Habitat for Humanity while I was serving on Commissioner's Court, and got to work together on some of that. I love transportation. I love geeking out over, public works. I love all that kind of stuff. I just, now they would never let me drive one of the Caterpillars. They would let me get near it. They're like, no, we're not doing that with heels and a pink hard hat. But one of the big passions that came out of that, and I think this goes back to my time as a special education teacher, and that was mental health and the issues. And if I thought there were issues with mental health and lack of services and lack of help back then, oh my goodness, post-COVID, I know I'm preaching to the choir. It has been horrible. You've got 8 and 9-year-old, people as young as 8 and 9 trying to commit suicide. Just so many horrible things have come out of that. So mental health has always been a huge passion of mine. I was really proud of the work I got to do in the mental health arena while I was on Commissioner's Court.
Leads me to another question.
Okay.
Which is, before you ran, did you know how bad mental health services were? Or was there once you got into office, then it was opened up like, wow?
And that's a very interesting question, because yes, to a certain extent I did, because the disability community that I worked so closely with, it's they have like a parallel organization. So you've got, people who are mentally handicapped or who, maybe have severe autism or something. And so I was always working things for, how do I get these kids, my students, a job? How do, how do we help the parents go to the right place to get somebody in a group home, or whatever the case may be, just so the right services were there. And then on the other side of that, mental health is going on. Different issues, obviously different issues, but the needs and the problems in both of those areas, still to this day, money's not easily accessible. we're always needing to hire more staff. There's so many people. It always it really breaks my heart when I'm driving somewhere and I see somebody and I'm like, that's probably a homeless vet who has severe PTSD. And you pray for them, but then you want to know, do we have enough people to get to those folks to get them into the right programs so they don't end up as, one of the 22, military people on average that kill themselves a day, so they don't end up in jail. And now luckily we do in Collin County in particular, we've got a veterans court, we've got some great programs, we've got a court that's a juvenile court. They do some great things, but there's always the need's always there. And I think we have not even reached the tip of the iceberg as far as the mental health crisis in our country as a result of COVID. There are kids who are paralyzed, can't go back to school. They've gone back to school, and even though maybe there's not a risk of COVID, they won't take their masks off because they've gotten to where they don't want anybody to see their precious face. And I think of a 9 or 10-year-old girl or an 11 or 12-year-old girl or boy still keeping that mask on, then that's no longer a problem with they're worried about. Now, maybe if there was an outbreak or something, that may be the case, or if they've got a medically fragile, individual at home. But what we're finding out is this has become a mental health issue because their self-esteem has plummeted so low that they feel like they have to wear it. And I don't know about you, but that breaks my heart for a kid who goes back and I don't want to take it off. Yeah. That just breaks my heart. And that's not some political statement on masks. That's a statement on the mental health of our kids. And we've got to pay attention to that. We really do. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we could go down a whole rabbit hole on.
Let's do a 3-hour show.
The physical mask versus the emotional mask that people wear.
Exactly.
There are emotional masks that children wear, adults wear, whether it's having to do with depression because they don't want somebody else to know what they're going through. Yep. Whether it's, sexuality, they don't want people to know what they're going, whatever it is, people are wearing masks, whether they're physical or just emotional.
Oh, absolutely.
And I believe, just like you, there's got to be something that needs to be. So, question, that's something. So edify.
No pressure.
Or educate our audience here. What does that look like? Is it from the state? Is it mostly from the county? Is it because it's not from local?
Here's, in the perfect world, it would be a combination. I'm a big local government kind of person. I know what works best in my town kind of thing. But I understand because funding is always involved. So you're going to have state dollars and then you're going to have federal dollars. And so how does all that work out? But I'm going to tell you, before we can even go and fix the financial issues, ask for more money, ask that different monies be spent differently, that it's easier access for the parents who need it for their kids who are suffering, or whatever the case may be. As a society, we have got to be okay talking about mental health. It's almost like, now you're younger than me, but back in the day, I remember, people would be like, oh, so-and-so has cancer. And you don't whisper on a show, but you whisper, that you would whisper, because it was you don't talk about it. Well, now, it's great. We've got, people going out and dressing all in pink and having these big runs for breast cancer and all these great things. You see things about, fighting cancer all the time. If somebody's, sick and they're going through a tough time, they'll post on social media and they get all kinds of love and support. So that's fantastic. Where is the love and support for mental health? And Matt, what's so tough about mental health, and I've got loved ones, I've got family members who suffer varying degrees of mental illness. you don't know who has it. You don't know who's dealing with it. And you don't know who's a caretaker to somebody who's got maybe something like bipolar or severe depression or severe anxiety. Those things are real, but you're not in a wheelchair. You don't lose your hair like you do sometimes with cancer treatment. You don't have a broken arm. It's not physically, you don't see it.
Right. It reminds me of the commercial that I saw. I think it was just a Be Kind commercial. And it was in a coffee shop. And you may remember this commercial. It was a few years back. But it was from your perspective. And there were all these people in this coffee shop. And there were these little bubbles that came out of there, like dealing with depression. Or, mom just died. Or, this and that. But they had a smile on their face. You couldn't tell what was going on just from their outward appearance. So it was a message of be kind, because you don't know what another person is going through.
And how much does it cost to be kind?
Nothing.
Do you need to be rich to do it? Okay. So you don't have to have money to do it. How much time does it take? I mean, in the grand scheme of things, how tough is it to say a nice word to the person checking you out, or be nice to the waiter or the waitress? How long does it take to, I saw my buddy the other day and he kind of seemed a little off. I'm just going to shoot him a text and just say, hey, hope everything's okay. If you want to grab a cup of coffee, I'm available. So if that's all it takes, then why isn't everybody doing that? And so that's kind of the bigger picture that I grapple with is, first of all, we have got to talk about it. We've got to be okay with talking about it. There's been such a stigma attached to mental health, and that's not okay, and that's not moving us forward. So I think the more we progress towards, oh, okay, so-and-so suffers from depression. Okay, this is why they had to take, time off and use the Family Medical Leave Act kind of a thing. If we get more people out there telling their stories, if the conversations are very honest, if somebody doesn't have to go hide in shame, well, then we've got a better chance of tackling this. Because again, if you don't know that, wow, 3 out of 4 people in this family are suffering from a diagnosed mental illness. If you don't know that, oh, and by the way, 3 of your neighbors have contemplated suicide in the last 6 months. If we don't know that and people aren't out there talking about it, then trying to solve the money problem and trying to solve all the logistics of how do you work the local government with the state government, with the federal government, and with the nonprofits too. Because I know you love the nonprofit world as much as I do, and we would not survive without those. And also churches. There are a lot of churches who are really kind and giving when it comes to that kind of stuff. So that's a bigger issue.
It's interesting that you say, because what thought comes to mind for me when you were talking just now is people that, if they haven't had a family member or they haven't personally had the experience with cancer, or they haven't suffered from a mental illness, or they haven't, whatever it may be, fill in the blank, right? They're not going to be as passionate about finding a solution. And I think that's where, in my personal opinion, where that maybe comes from, is that people are in their own little world, dealing with their own issues. And until cancer rears its ugly head, they don't pay attention to it.
Right.
Until mental illness rears its ugly head, they don't pay attention to it. And that's one reason I am doing this video podcast, is because I want to hear people's stories. I want to take the time to sit down and talk. And you and I were talking yesterday in a pre-show conversation about social media.
Yes.
Social media has gotten to a point where we do not talk to one another. We talk at each other. Yep. We yell at each other behind a computer screen and on a keyboard. And I just want to know your perspective on social media and how you feel that it has affected not only, our young children, but also, since you're in the political realm, the politicians that we have out.
It's all sunshine and butterflies there. That I don't know what you speak. okay, social media. And I was one of those kind of, I was kind of kicking and screaming and dragging my feet getting on social media, but I'd been on the radio a couple of years, and JP, who's the other part of JP, Kathy, and the crew, when he was finally said, you can't use my Facebook page anymore. So at age 50, I said, okay, I told everybody, okay, when I turn 50, I'm finally going to get on Facebook. And I got on, and it was great because, you know, my dad was like, okay, finally. I was afraid I was going to kick the bucket before you got on it. And I'm like, well, thanks, Dad. That was a real good guilt trip there. You know, I reconnected with friends from elementary school, and it was fantastic. Political friends I hadn't seen in a long time. It was fantastic. And in the meantime, I remember on our radio show, we had done a whole segment, like a 6-week series on bullying online for preteens and teenagers. And it's horrible. You know, I know my daughter ran into some of that. I know other friends who their son or daughter ran into some serious situations on there. But then I start looking around, and I'm like, wait a second. The adults aren't exactly behaving as they should. And like sometimes I'll see somebody say something so horrible to somebody else, and I'll just kind of shake my head, and I think, if they were sitting like us talking, would you say, well, Matt, you know, and just
would you say it to their face?
All this venom, you know, would you say it to their face? Because I've always thought, and this may be a lot of how I was raised with my mom and dad, but then also I was a Dale Carnegie instructor, did sales and training for a while. And one of the things that Dale Carnegie talked about was how to disagree agreeably. And I feel like I know where I stand on my issues politically. You know where you stand. We may agree with 60, 70, 80, maybe 90, 95%. That's great. But on the parts we don't agree, or if you run into somebody who you don't agree on barely anything, well, maybe you only do agree on a 5% thing. Can't you come together on that 5% thing? Or can you just say, hey, you know, and use your voice, influence people, tell them about what's going on, why you believe the way you do, but then not slam somebody else in the process.
Right.
I don't know.
No, I understand completely what you're saying as far as being respectful of somebody else's opinion. Just because they have a differing opinion doesn't mean that they are wrong. Doesn't mean that they have to believe the way you do, or you can't be in their presence, or you can't communicate with them anymore in the future. Thanks for tuning in today. Stay tuned next week for the second part of Kathy Ward's episode. You don't want to miss the rest of her story. And again, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you.
If you'd like to contact Matt or know a fascinating person with an inspiring story that would make a great guest, reach out to the show at themattHiltonshow@gmail.com.